Thea Stilton. MOUSEFORD Academy. The Royal Ball. The 11th Rule. It was a busy afternoon in the newspaper office at MOUSEFORD Academy. Student reporters were getting ready to put out the next issue. 5 of them, Pam, Colette, Nikki, Violet, and Paulina, called themselves the Thea sisters. They had named themselves after Thea Stilton, an award-winning journalist and a visiting professor at the academy. Thea was also the newspaper's advisor. She was off on another one of her adventures, but she had left behind a list for her students, the top 10 journalism rules. Unfortunately for the newspaper staff. The top 10 journalism rules. 1. Make sure your first sentence is exciting to draw in your reader. 2. News happens fast, but your writing shouldn't. Take your time. 3. Put the most important information at the top of your story, and the least important info at the bottom. 4. Support every fact in your article with evidence. 5. Include a source for each fact. 6. Stick to the facts unless you're writing a review or an opinion piece. 7. If you use a quote from another source, be sure to say where it's from. 8. Double-check the spelling of any names and places in your story. 9. Present all angles of an issue and let readers make up their own minds. 10. Don't do all your research behind a computer. Get out into the community and find out what people are talking about. They were about to learn the 11th rule, always bulk up your work on an external drive. Ron, a reporter for the paper, burst into the office. "I have bad news," he announced. "My computer crashed. I lost the article that's due today on the year's hottest cheese trends." "Now what do we do?" exclaimed Tanya, the newspaper's editor-in-chief. "We've got to go to print tonight." "Stay calm, everybody," Paulina suggested. "Ron, can I see your computer? Maybe I can recover the file." "I think it's hopeless," Ron replied with a sigh. "The computer is just a blank screen." "Can't you rewrite the article?" Colette asked. Ron shook his head. "All of my notes were on my computer." Before he could finish his sentence, a loud clatter came from outside. Clang! Bang! Bang! Clang! Bang! "Holy cheese!" Pam exclaimed. "What is that racket?" "Let's go find out," Nikki suggested, and the students all headed outside. A roaring arrival. Once they reached the courtyard, the sound was louder. But they couldn't see the source of the noise. "Where is it coming from?" yelled Shin, a mouse with short hair and glasses. Pam ran toward the entrance gate and pointed. "Everybody, look!" An old blue and white van was moving up the path to MOUSEFORD. It clanked and sputtered and looked like it was about to fall apart. "Do you think they're campers who got lost?" Colette asked. "Maybe," Pam said. "That van is in bad shape. Not great for camping, that's for sure." The van pulled up in front of the academy, sputtering and spewing smoke that puffed out of the exhaust pipe like clouds. 2 young rodents got out of the vehicle. The blonde rodent extended Histo, the nearest student, Ruby Flashy Fur. "Hi," he greeted her. "I'm Bradley, and this is my friend Irving." Irving, a rodent with red hair and glasses, smiled. Ruby grimaced when she saw the motor oil on Bradley's paw. "I'm not shaking that greasy paw," she exclaimed. Bradley wiped his paw on his pants. "Sorry, but our motor conked out on the road." Pam walked up to him. "You have nothing to be sorry for," she said, glaring at Ruby. "We're sorry for the rude welcome you just received." "I'm Pam." Everyone introduced themselves. Bradley and Irving explained that they were two students visiting MOUSEFORD. "We'll be spending a month here at the academy," Irving added. Just then Headmaster Octavius de Mussis approached the group of students. "Ahem, welcome, you two, he sputtered. He seemed strangely agitated. "You two, visiting students?" Colette suggested. "Exactly. That's it," the headmaster cried. Then he turned to the two new arrivals. "Come with me to my office. I need to speak with you," he said mysteriously. A prince in disguise. The professor had become tongue-tied when he welcomed Bradley and Irving. But it was because he couldn't tell the other students the truth. De Mussis, in fact, was the only one at the academy who knew that the two students weren't ordinary visiting students. "Prince Bradley," began the headmaster once the door to his office was closed. "I am delighted to welcome you to MOUSEFORD. And from this moment on, I will call you simply Bradley, as though you were a regular student." A large smile appeared on Bradley's snout. His dream was coming true. The royal family. As a prince, he had to live a very strict life and follow the rules of the royal family. Bradley had always imagined going on a vacation disguised as a normal student. So he had reached out to Headmaster de Mussis, who had agreed to his plan. Bradley could stay at MOUSEFORD Academy for 1 month. The headmaster would keep his secret. Bradley would study with students his own age and have some fun as a regular mouse. The beat-up fan was part of his disguise. Nobody would think he was a normal student if he had arrived in an expensive sports car. "Headmaster, I thank you so much for your hospitality," Bradley responded. "And let me introduce my cousin Irving, who has offered to accompany me on this adventure." "Nice to meet you, Irving," the headmaster replied. Then he gave them each a schedule of classes and pointed to the door. "Now get out of here," he said. The two rodents looked at him, confused. De Mussis smiled. "Get out of here and have a good time. MOUSEFORD Academy is waiting for you." "A great idea." Out in the courtyard, Pam kept ailing around Bradley and Irving's van. "Pam, you're staring at that engine like it's a pepperoni pizza," Violet teased. "You're itching to get your paws on it, aren't you? Do you think Bradley and Irving would mind?" Pam asked hopefully. She was a great mechanic. "Why would we mind?" Bradley asked as he and Irving approached the van. "Maybe you'll figure out why it makes all that noise." Bradley went up to the van and opened the hood. "Go ahead, Pam, but don't laugh when you look at the engine," he said. "I had to fix it myself on the road, but I didn't have any supplies or tools with me. So I had to use my suspenders." Pam laughed. "Seriously? Did it work?" She peered into the engine and saw that the alternator belt had been replaced with a strip of sturdy red leather. "Well, it got us here," Bradley said. "That's some quick thinking in an emergency," Pam said. "Although it's not something I would normally recommend." The newspaper staff was watching the scene. Ron's eyes lit up. "Hey, I think I've got an idea for a new article, and we can do it quickly," he said. "What about creative solutions to everyday problems? We can go around campus and ask for ideas, and take photos of students who have suggestions." Tanya nodded. "I think that could work." She turned to the staff. "We need everyone's help. Let's go get some great ideas." The students found plenty of ideas for the article. The first one came right from Colette. She had a favorite trick she used when her hair was dirty and she didn't have time to wash it. Be resourceful. When a problem arises, the solution might be right in your paws. Dry shampoo. A little cornstarch will remove excess oils from hair. Water workout: use 2 full bottles of water like weights. It's simple, she said. Just sprinkle a little bit of cornstarch into your roots, and then brush or comb it through your hair. It will soak up any extra oils. It works like magic. Really? Violet squeaked in surprise. That's a great tip. I'll be sure to use it the next time I'm tight on time. Craig, an athletic rodent, had a sports-related idea. Sometimes when I'm studying, I don't have time to go to the gym. So I take a break and use full water bottles instead of weights while I do a quick workout routine. A few hours later, they had finished the article and the paper was almost ready to go to print. You've all done a great job today, Tanya told the staff. It's missing just one thing, Paulina said. A catchy headline. Bradley came up with the winning solution. How about big ideas for small problems? Tanya smiled. That's perfect, Bradley. Let's go to print. 2 new friends. Bradley and Irving had spent the whole afternoon helping to write, photograph, and design the newspaper. In a few hours, they had stopped being the new arrivals and had become MOUSEFORD students in every way. They dove into student life with lots of energy and a great attitude. Nobody suspected that they were really members of a royal family. They got up early in the morning and jogged around campus with Nikki and Craig. They stayed up late at night, researching in the library with Paulina. Everyone thought Irving was sweet. And Bradley was very polite, with elegant manners. Even Professor Margaret Ratcliffe was impressed by Bradley's behavior, and the Thea sisters knew that she was not easy to impress. This young man really has the manners of a prince, she exclaimed one day in the hallway. Ruby Flashy Fur and her friends overheard the remark. Ruby sneered, right. He's the prince of broken-down vans. Ruby wanted nothing to do with Bradley. Pam, on the other hand, bonded with him very quickly. While they worked together to repair the van, Pam and Bradley discovered that they had a lot in common. They both came from big families, they both loved cars, and pizza was their favorite food. This new friendship bothered Pam's friend Shin. Hi, Pam. Look. Watch out. Oops. Shin had a little crush on Pam, and lately, she was so busy with Bradley that she almost never had time to hang out with Shin. He wanted to talk to Pam about it, but he couldn't find the words. So he came up with a plan. He pretended to be an expert skateboarder in the hope that he would get Pam's attention. The plan had one problem: Shin didn't know how to ride a skateboard. When he tried to impress Pam, he landed right on his tail. Embarrassed, he returned to his room. A minute later, he heard someone knocking on his door. Knock, knock, knock. Shin opened it and saw Pam standing there, smiling. Hey, Shin, she said eagerly. Go get your jacket, we're all going sailing, and you won't want to miss it. Shin hesitated. I've never been on a sailboat before, he said nervously. I wouldn't know what to do. Don't worry, I'll teach you some tricks. Pam replied. It'll be fun. Promise. Shin smiled back. If you say so. Should I bring anything? Maybe some geese for a snack? Maybe? Of course you should bring some cheese. Pam said. Shin quickly got ready, and he and Pam joined the others outside. The students didn't know it, but they were about to miss their trip because of a fun, unexpected event. Invasion of the Marbles. The Thea sisters and their friends were walking through the shopping district when a rodent wearing glasses came running toward them. Watch out, she screamed. It was Cammy, one of the owners of the Thrifty Rat. She was chasing hundreds of tiny colorful balls that were rolling across the square. What are those things? Asked Irving, squinting. I don't know, said Violet, but they look like marbles. Nikki finished. They all jumped aside to avoid the tiny. Help. Oh no! Huh? What? Balls, and Shin landed in the fountain. The marbles rolled all the way down the sorry street, across the dock, and then splashed into the water. Cammy, what happened? Paulina asked. Sorry. Cammy replied, catching her breath. Tamara and I were emptying the warehouse. I was carrying the box when the bottom broke and the marbles rolled out. Lots of boxes were stacked outside the thrifty rat. Tamara, the other owner, came out of the shop. Oh, hi, she said when she saw the students. We're having a big sale to make way for new merchandise. Come check it out. Thanks, but we're about to go for a sale, Pam said. Pam, we can sale any day, but it's not every day the thrifty rat has a huge sale. Colette said. She started looking through boxes. Ooh, is that pink silk? Pam looked at the others. What do you say? Colette looks so happy that I can't bear to drag her away. I'm curious to see what's in all these boxes, Bradley replied, and the friends began to rummage through them. They discovered all types of objects, snow globes from cities all over the world, scuba gear, and buttons that looked like jewels. Violet was rummaging through an enormous box when her eyes got wide. Look, she exclaimed. There are beautiful gowns in this one. Oh, those are gowns that we used to rent to theater companies on the island. Tamara explained. They're gorgeous. Colette said. Why don't we use them to put on a play? Paulina suggested. Or a fancy costume ball. Nikki proposed. Bradley smiled. You know what I say? We could do both of those things. Look at this wonderful gown. How would that work? Pam asked. We could plan a day of theatrical performances in spots all around the island, he replied. And the grand finale of the festival can be a magnificent costume ball. A theater festival? That's a great idea, Tamara said. You can use whatever is in these boxes for free. We'll call it the Whale Island Theater Festival. Shin cheered. Fabumouse. Bradley replied. The Thea sisters and their friends all cheered. Well, what are we waiting for? Colette asked. Let's get to work. Everyone to work. The students immediately went to Headmaster de Mouses, who loved the idea for the festival and gave his approval. We're going to need lots of help, Nikki remarked as they left his office. Let's have a meeting, Pam suggested. We can hang posters around campus. I'll help, Bradley said, smiling at her. The day of the meeting, Colette was anxious. What do we do if no one comes Whale Island Theater Festival? Help us organize. Meeting Monday. 4 p.m. Room 110. To the meeting, she asked as she and her friends made their way to room 110. Don't worry, I'm sure we'll get a big crowd, Pam assured her. Pam was right. When they got to the meeting room, it was already crowded with students and even some professors. What a great turnout! Pam said when everyone was quiet. Right now, we need some ideas for performances at the festival. I'm happy to help put together some theatrical shows, Professor Robert Plotfer offered. And I was thinking we could have some musical groups at the festival, too. Professor Anna Aria added. Bradley raised his paw. I think we should break up into groups and brainstorm. Everyone liked that suggestion. Students grouped together and started talking. Some wanted to do comedy skits. Others wanted to sing or dance. And a few wanted to work behind the scenes. We'll also need some crafty rodents to make extra costumes for the ball, Colette exclaimed. The gowns from the thrifty rat are wonderful, but there aren't enough for everyone who wants to come to the ball. Colette, you should definitely oversee the costume committee, Violet suggested. Ruby Flashyfur and her friends Alicia, Connie, and Zoe had come to the meeting. Her three friends started talking excitedly about the ball. I have an idea for my costume, Zoe said. I'd love to go as a queen. I'd like to dress as a fairy princess, Alicia said. Then she turned to Ruby. What costume will you make? Ruby rolled her eyes. I don't have time to worry about making a silly costume, she replied. I'll be busy rehearsing for the most amazing show of the whole festival line. The drama begins. A comedy act? Professor Plotfur said. That's a fun idea. Pam and Colette looked at each other and smiled, happy to have the approval of their theater teacher. The two friends had stayed up late trying to think of a performance they could put on for the theater festival. When they had an idea they liked, they brought it to the drama professor to get his opinion. The title of the performance will be Opposites, explained Pam. We're thinking that it could be a two-person comedy act, Colette continued. It will be about how we're roommates, but we're opposites in so many ways. Plotfur nodded. I see, he said. So you'll give examples of how one of you thinks the other's habits are strange. Exactly! Pam exclaimed. For example, every night Colette covers her snout with a beauty mask that looks like disgusting green mush and smells funny. Colette looked at Pam. Shocked. Disgusting? How about when you come into the room after motocross racing and you're still wearing your muddy boots? Hey! Pamela cried. You could have told me that bothered you. And you could have told me that you think I look like a green monster, retorted Colette. I never said that. Pam countered. I said the mask was disgusting, and it is. It looks like ground-up slugs, and it smells even worse. Colette put her paws on her hips. Well, your muddy boots don't smell like roses. Pam, Colette-Professor Plotfur tried to interrupt. But Pam didn't give him time to finish his sentence. She turned to Colette. If it bothers you that much, then maybe you need to find yourself a new roommate. And you need to find a new partner for the comedy act, Colette shot back. I'm leaving. No, I'm leaving. Pam yelled. The two of them stormed out of Plotfur's office. The theater festival was 2 weeks away, but the drama had already begun. Preparations and hopes. The other Thea sisters had no idea that Colette and Pam were arguing. They were busy with the festival planning. Violet was a good actor, but very shy. She and Irving decided to prepare a photography exhibit instead. We can exhibit our photos outdoors, in the streets of Whale Island, Irving said. Festival goers will pass by them as they walk from one performance to the next. Great idea! Violet agreed. Meanwhile, Nikki teamed up with Bradley, Craig, and Tanya to form a band for the festival, the Cheddars. Tanya would play bass, Nikki was on rhythm guitar, Craig would play the drums, and Bradley would play lead guitar and sing. Paulina volunteered to program the fireworks display that would close the festival. I've never programmed fireworks before, but I think I can do it, she said confidently. She spent hours on her computer creating a colorful program that would be set to music. Paulina, Nikki, and Violet caught up with one another at the end of the day. I've been taking photos of the beautiful flowers on the island, Violet told her friends. And I finally mastered the bass part for our first song, Nikki reported. It was tough, but I practiced a ton. There was a glitch in the fireworks program, but I found an online tutorial and figured out how to fix it, Paulina said proudly. Suddenly, they heard a familiar voice coming from the garden. What a silly fight! It was Colette. She was anxiously thinking about the fight she had with Pam that morning. At first, her feelings had been hurt. But when she thought more about it, Pam hadn't said anything bad. Colette's green snout mask was kind of gross, but she liked how soft it made her fur feel. Violet, Nikki, and Paulina approached her. Hey, Colette, Violet said. Is something wrong? Colette explained everything that had happened. That sounds like a misunderstanding to me, Nikki remarked. Paulina nodded. I'm sure Pam feels just as badly as you do. Don't worry, Violet said. I'm sure you'll find a way to make peace with Pam. I hope so, Colette said. She frowned. Thinking. Then her eyes lit up when she spotted a small puddle in the garden. Maybe I just found a way to do it, she said with a grin. Trading places. Pam sighed and ate another spoonful of triple chocolate ice cream from the pint she was holding. I was such a jerk, she muttered to herself. Colette has every right to be angry with me. Sitting on the deserted bleachers on the ball fields, Pamela watched the sun go down and thought again about the how silly argument she'd had with her friend. I could have been nicer about that green snout goop, she said to herself. It's not that bad. Pam! Bradley exclaimed, running up the bleachers. Did you forget? We were supposed to meet in the library to study. Pam slapped her forehead. I'm sorry, it slipped my mind. Then Bradley noticed the sad look on Pam's snout. He sat down next to her. You look upset, he said. Is there anything I can do to help? I'm not sure, Pam admitted. But she told Bradley the whole story of her argument with Colette anyway. Maybe telling a friend would help. Bradley listened quietly as Pam squeaked. Then, finally, he spoke. I can tell by looking in your eyes how sad you are about this, he said. You and Colette must have a very strong friendship if this is upsetting you so much. I thought we did, Pam said, shaking her snout. But now I'm afraid I've ruined it. Bradley shook his head. I don't think so, Pam. You and Colette have been through so much together. Your friendship won't crumble because of one misunderstanding. Pam sighed. I wish I could tell her that I didn't mean it. That the things that make us different are what make our friendship special. Why can't you tell her? Bradley suggested. Just say exactly what you just told me. Pam brightened. You're right, she exclaimed. I wasn't thinking clearly. Let's go find Colette. The two mice ran back to the dorms and entered Pam and Colette's room. Colette wasn't there yet. Hold on. I've got an idea, Pam said. She went straight into the bathroom and searched through the cabinet above the sink. Finally, she found the jar containing Colette's green mask. She opened it and began to spread it all over her snout. Just as she was closing the jar, she heard heavy footsteps entering the room. Curious, she emerged from the bathroom to see who it was. Coco, she exclaimed with surprise. Her friend was wearing a pair of motocross boots covered in MUD. Seeing Pam with her snout covered in green goop, Colette broke out in a laugh. Pam, I love you, even when you come in with dirty boots, she cried. And I love you even with green goop on your snout. Pam replied. She ran to hug her friend. Violet, Nikki, and Paulina had arrived with Colette, so they witnessed the two friends getting back together. I knew you two couldn't stay mad at each other for long, Nikki remarked. Pam and Colette broke away from their hug. They looked at each other and laughed. Sorry, but you look so funny in that snout mask, Colette said. And you look so funny in those muddy boots, Pam added. Colette's eyes lit up. Pam, I think I have an idea for our comedy act. Commotion in the square. 2 weeks flew by as everyone prepared for the festival. Finally, the opening was just 1 day away. The Thea sisters were caught up in the frenzy as everyone worked to finish their pieces. Violet and Irving were downtown, setting up the last of the photographs for their exhibition. Almost done, Irving announced as he placed a pretty photograph of flowers on the windowsill of a shop. Honk! Honk! In the distance, he and Violet heard what sounded like a very large, rumbling truck. I think it's in the square, Irving said. Let's check it out. Violet and Irving ran toward the sound and saw that a large box truck had parked in the square. Workers began unloading wood panels and planks from the back of the truck. Ruby's friend Zoe was wearing a construction hat and barking orders at the workers. What are all those workers doing here? Violet asked her. Irving smiled at Zoe. And what are you doing here? Zoe rolled her eyes at them. I'm supervising, can't you see that? These workers are setting up for Ruby's performance. It's going to be awesome. What's she going to do? Violet asked. Zoe grinned. It's called Flight of the Angels. Irving's eyes got wide. Flight of the Angels? You mean she's going to fly across the square on a cable suspended in the air? What else would she be doing? It's a Mouse stunt, and Ruby is perfect for it, Zoe replied. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm very busy. In the meantime, in her dorm room, Ruby was trying on the dress that she would wear during the show. Ruby, you look beautiful, Alicia exclaimed. Don't I? Ruby replied, admiring herself in the mirror. My mother had this dress made just for me by that hot new designer, Stella McWhiskers. She could picture the act in her mind. She would be suspended in the air, as light as a butterfly, while everyone on Whale Island gazed up at her. Shin's loud voice interrupted her daydream. Hey, everybody, the Cheddars are about to practice, he yelled down the hallway. Ruby stuck her head through the doorway. Could you stop yelling? Who cares about the Cheddar's practice, anyway? I do, her friend Connie said. Yeah, so do I, Alicia said, and Connie dashed for the door, but Ruby stopped them. Stay here. I need your help, she said. She gazed down the hallway. A large group of students was hurrying after Shin to watch the Cheddars practice. Humph, Ruby snorted. Those Cheddars are starting to cheese me off. One performance too many. Ruby closed the door. Who cares about a boring band like the Cheddars, she said. Once everyone sees my performance, that's all anyone on Whale Island will be talking about. Alicia was looking through the program for the festival. Ruby, there might be a little problem, she said nervously. It says here that you and the Cheddars are going on at the same time at the end of the festival. Ruby ripped the program from Alicia's paws. What did you say? She gasped. Let me see. She squinted, reading. But I can't change the time of my performance, she shrieked. The workers won't be finished building the structure in time. She quickly changed out of her costume and then rushed over to the practice room to study her rivals. But Ruby, Alicia, and Connie couldn't even get inside the practice. room, it was packed. And it wasn't just students who liked the Cheddars. Ruby spotted Professor Arya in the room, clapping and tapping her feet. And Headmaster de Mussis had heard the music from the hallway. He stepped inside and bounced on his heels to the peppy tune. If this practice is so crowded, imagine what tomorrow night will be like, Connie remarked. Ruby glared at her, turned on her heels angrily, and stomped back to her room. She had to be sure that her exhibition was packed with the most spectators, and there was only one way to do that, to sabotage the Cheddars and their show. Don't worry, Ruby, Alicia said. Maybe it will rain tomorrow. The Cheddars can't perform in the rain. Connie sighed. Alicia, that's a silly thought. If that happens, Ruby can't perform either. But Ruby had a gleam in her eyes. We don't need rain, but some water might do the trick. When Zoe returned from the town square, Ruby explained her plan. Her friends agreed to help her. That night, Connie, Alicia, and Zoe waited until everyone was asleep and the campus was quiet. Then they tiptoed through the dark hallways to the practice room. Once inside, they turned on the faucet of the sink in the small adjoining bathroom and plugged the drain. Then they quickly fled. The water filled the sink and then overflowed. It poured into the practice room and began to rise, ruining the band's instruments. The Whale Island Theater Festival. Welcome, one and all, to the very first Whale Island Theater Festival. Headmaster de Mussis announced the next morning. Thanks to the hard work of the students at MOUSEFORD, the inhabitants of the island woke up to a colorful celebration. Violet and Irving's photos decorated the buildings. Jugglers and mimes performed on the streets. Mice danced to the music that filled the air. After exploring the island all morning, Nikki, Violet, and Paulina made their way through the crowd to the Cheese House Diner. Wow! Let's go! Tada! This is great! They were about to enter when they heard a voice behind them. Wait for me! Professor Plotfer! Paulina exclaimed. Are you coming to see Colette and Pam's show, too? Of course, responded the teacher. I wouldn't miss it for the world. They said they had a clever new idea for their act. Do you know what it is? No, Violet replied. But whatever it is, I'm sure it will be something special. In the others' shoes. Since they had made peace, Colette and Pam had kept everything about their comedy act a secret. They practiced in their dorm room so the act would be a surprise to all their friends. Now it was time to debut their act. Pam peeked out from behind the curtain that had been set up in the diner. The place is packed, Pam whispered to Colette. Nikki, Paulina, and Violet are in the front row. Colette smiled. That means it's almost showtime. Colette and Pam walked out onto the stage and the audience burst out in laughter and applause. Oh my gosh, exclaimed Nikki. They've switched places. Pam was wearing one of Colette's pink jumpsuits. She had styled her hair in bouncy waves, and she was putting on makeup. Great job! He. Woot, woot! Ha, ha! Yeah. Colette had curled her hair to look like Pam's, and she wore cargo pants and a sweater. Everyone got the joke. Pam was pretending to be Colette, and Colette was pretending to be Pam. I wish that shampoo came in gallon-sized bottles, Pam said. And I wish that the school served pizza for breakfast, said Colette. It was a short show about 15 minutes long, and afterward, they met their friends outside the diner. You two were fabulous, Bradley exclaimed. I could not stop laughing. Nikki added. Pam grinned. Thanks. I can't wait to hear your band play later. Nikki turned to Bradley. We should get at least one more practice in before the show. Bradley nodded. Right. Nikki and Bradley found Craig and Tanya watching a dance troupe in the square. Then the four of them headed back to the academy. When Nikki opened the door to the practice room, she let out a gasp. Oh no, she cried. A great idea. The four friends couldn't believe their eyes. The room was completely flooded. How could this happen? Tanya asked. Everything is ruined. Nikki heard running water. First she checked to be sure all of the equipment in the room was unplugged. Then she took off her shoes and waded through the flood to the bathroom. Someone left the faucet on, she announced as she turned it off. And someone blocked the drain with a bunch of rags. You mean someone did this on purpose? Bradley asked. But who would do such a thing? Tanya wondered. Does it matter? Craig asked. We've got a show to play in a few hours, and our instruments don't work. Now what do we do? Bradley wondered, gazing around the room in despair. Craig began to anxiously tap his paws on a stool. Tom-ti-u-tum. Tum-ti-u-tum. Tom-ti-o-tum. Tum. Nikki's eyes got wide. Craig, you are a genius, she shouted. You just gave me a tum-ti-o great idea. Craig, Bradley, and Tanya looked at her, confused. We can still perform, Nikki said. But instead of instruments, we can make music using everyday objects. And we can improvise some new songs. Tanya nodded. That could actually work. I can play trash can lids like they're cymbals, Bradley said. And I'll use an upside-down pot for a drum. Craig announced. I've got some empty tennis ball tubes. Nikki added. I'll put rice inside and transform them into maracas. I think the recycling bin might make a good drum, Tanya mused. They ran out of the practice room and scattered to find materials. A few minutes later, they met back up. We should start practicing, Bradley said. I've got a few ideas for our new sound. If we have a new sound, we should have a new name, Tanya pointed out. Nikki nodded. It should have something to do with our new instruments. The recyclers? Bradley suggested. These instruments are loud. Craig said, pounding the bucket with his drumstick. How about something more punk rock, like the Trash Rats? Nikki grinned. I love it. Get ready, Whale Island, the Trash Rats are coming. Presenting. The Trash Rats. Ruby stood on a balcony in the town square, smiling. The Cheddars had not shown up to their stage by the seaport. Disappointed, the crowds who wanted to see the band headed to see Ruby's performance, Flight of the Angels. Her assistant, Alan, helped her strap on the harness that she would wear when zipping across the cable. See, Alan, she said smugly. I am the most popular act in the whole festival. She waved at the spectators below. The show will begin in 1 minute, she called down to them. Ruby waited until there was a big crowd in the square. Then she waved to Connie, who stood below the balcony. Connie stepped forward, holding a microphone. Ladies and gentlemice, I am pleased to present the magnificent Ruby Flashyfur, who will perform the amazing dash. Tum-ti-u-tum. Crash. Bam, bam. Swish, swish. Loud, rhythmic noise filled the square. Every head turned toward the sound. Nikki, Bradley, Craig, and Tanya marched into the square, playing their improvised instruments. The gathered rodents began to bop their heads to the beat. They clapped along to the music. Hey, stop that racket. Ruby yelled down from the balcony, but nobody heard her. Violet, Colette, Pam, and Paulina ran up to the band. What happened to you all? Violet asked. We couldn't find you and we were worried about you. We had a little problem, Nikki replied without stopping the music. But we figured things out. We're not the Cheddars anymore, we're the Trash Rats. The band kept marching through the square toward the port. All the rodents in the square followed them, clapping there to the music. Wait! Where are you going? Connie shouted into a megaphone. You'll all miss Ruby's show. We're going to the Trash Rats. Show, somebody shouted back. Aren't they mouse-tastic? Connie nervously looked up at the balcony. Ruby wasn't going to like this one bit. Stop them! Ruby yelled furiously. I can't! Connie called back to her. The music is really good. With a shrug, Connie put down her megaphone and joined the crowd. Get back here, Connie! Ruby yelled, but her friend danced away without turning back. Fuming, Ruby took off her harness. There was nobody to watch her performance of the Flight of the Angels. Her own scheme had worked against her. The secret is revealed. The Trash Rats concert was a big hit. The music was funky and cheerful, but what made it special was that some members of the audience joined in. One rodent added the sound of his bike bell to the music. Another mouselet tapped her spoon against the side of her coffee mug. A mouse watching from her window started to pluck the strings of her clothes. Drying rack as if it were a guitar. Go, Trash Rats! Pamela cheered. Violet sighed. This has been so much fun. It's too bad the festival is almost over. But it's not over yet. The ball is tonight. Colette reminded her. And I can't. Feel the beat. Wait to wear my beautiful gown from the Thrifty Rat. Paulina winced. The Thrifty Rat. I forgot to pick up the decorations for tonight. Paulina, Pam, Violet, and Colette quickly hurried over to Tamara's shop. While Paulina gathered the decorations, Pam wandered over to the magazine rack. She spotted a magazine cover, and her eyes got wide. Holy cheese, she cried. I can't believe it. Look at this. Let me guess, Colette joked, the new issue of Motor Mice is out? Pam frowned. No, this isn't about cars, she said, and then she held up the magazine. But that's Bradley. Violet exclaimed. No, Pam corrected her. According to this, it's Prince Bradley. I thought he was my friend, Pam said, and her eyes filled with tears. Of course he's your friend, Pam, Paulina said, putting her arm around Pam's shoulders. Pam shrugged her off. What kind of friend lies about who he really is? News. Special issue. Star Styles. A royal mystery. What happened to Prince Bradley? A true friend. Pam left the shop and headed back toward the Trash Rats concert. Her friends followed her. I'm sure he's got a good explanation. Colette assured her. Pam frowned. I hope you're right, Coco. But my feelings are hurt pretty badly right now. We understand, Violet said. Let's hear what Bradley has to say. When the four friends arrived at the port, the concert had just ended, and Nikki, Bradley, Craig, and Tanya had climbed off the stage. Pam walked up to Bradley. Hey, can we speak to you for a minute? Me? Sure, Bradley said. Nikki noticed a strange tone in Pam's voice. She walked over to her friend. Pam, is everything okay? Pam took a deep breath. But before she could speak, Bradley interrupted her. You know that I lied to you, Bradley said, guessing the truth from the look on Pam's face. So it's true? Pam asked. Bradley nodded. Yes, I am Prince Bradley, he admitted, and Nikki gasped. I kept my identity a secret here at school because I wanted to be treated like a normal student. I've never known what that feels like until now. I can only imagine, Colette chimed in. As a prince, you're probably always being followed and photographed. Exactly. But when I drove up here in my beat-up van, I was just a regular mouse named Bradley, Bradley went on. And then I met all of you, and your friendship means so much to me. It means a lot to us, too, Violet said. Bradley smiled. I wanted to tell you the truth many times, but the fear of ruining everything always stopped me. Now I am afraid that I put our friendship in jeopardy, and that makes me sad. I hope that you can forgive me. He looked at Pam. She had been silent the entire time. Pam thought about the last few weeks with Bradley. He had laughed with her, studied with her, and listened to her when she needed to talk. He had never been anything less than a true friend. She smiled and looked at Bradley. You know what we need? A gigantic strawberry milkshake. Do you know what that's perfect for? Bradley smiled back. Let me guess. When you want to celebrate a happy moment with a friend? Exactly. Pam replied. Princess for a night. A few hours later, there was a great commotion in Pam and Colette's room. The Thea sisters were getting ready for the costume ball together, putting the final touches on their outfits. Colette and Paulina were wearing two of the fancy gowns from the thrifty rack and styling their hair with flowers. Violet, who had decided to dress as an orchestra conductor, was adjusting her bow tie. Nikki was putting on her tree costume, which included a bushy green wig that looked like leaves. Pam was having a problem with her gown. I accidentally wiped my paws on it after I finished fixing my motorcycle the other day, and it has a big stain on it, she moaned. Oh no! Colette cried. We'll have to whip up some other costume for you. Just then there was a loud knock on the door. Pam opened it and found a pretty box with a red bow sitting there. Look, there's a card, Violet said. It's for you, Pam. Pam read the card aloud. It's from Bradley, she cried happily. He wants me to go with him to the ball. Then she opened the box. Inside was a beautiful evening gown. Pam held it up. The top was a red corset decorated with a green satin bow, and the bottom was a flouncy yellow skirt made of satin and tulle. But that wasn't all. To go with the dress was a pair of green satin gloves and a gold tiara. Wonderful! Colette squealed. Now you have a costume for the ball. Pam changed into the gown, and when she returned to the room, her friends were breathless. She looked like a real princess. Pam, that dress is perfect for you, Colette cried. Do you think so? Pam asked, looking at herself in the mirror with a frown. I think I'm missing something. She ran into the bathroom and returned a few seconds later. There we go. Now I'm ready, she announced. Her friends looked at her, confused. But you don't look any different, Nikki exclaimed. But I do, Pam replied. I added my own personal touch. She raised her skirt to reveal her favorite boots. A happy ending. The Thea sisters entered the academy gym, which had been decorated for the ball. Streamers, colored lights, and balloons made the space look totally magical. Wow! Pam exclaimed. It's like we're living in a fairy tale. It's true, and your prince is here. Nikki joked, seeing Bradley and Irving walk over. Irving used the costume ball to show off his sense of humor. He dressed like a dining table, complete with a tablecloth, plate, and silverware. Bradley was dressed like an elegant prince. Only the Thea sisters, Tanya, and Craig knew his secret: it wasn't a costume, but his royal family's traditional outfit. "Good evening, Pam. You look beautiful," Bradley said, bowing deeply. "Will you dance with me?" He took Pam's paw and brought her to the center of the dance floor. They began to gracefully spin and twirl to the music. They quickly got the attention of the other students, who admired their harmonious dancing. The evening was a whirl. Everyone danced and talked and ate yummy food. Then, when the clock struck midnight, the costume ball was over. The party had ended, but the festival still had one more event. Everyone moved to the north tower of the academy building to watch the fireworks show that Paulina had designed. Bam! Boom! Pop! As the fireworks burst in the air in beautiful shades of blue and gold, the Thea sisters looked at one another and smiled. "We really are in a fairy tale," Pam said. "And it's got the best ending ever."